Hi, and welcome to this week's True Crime livestream. I'm FEARSONA, your friendly neighborhood true crime VTuber, here to give you full body chills. And I apologize for not being too, positive as I always am. A lot is happening, and I'm still kind of in that stressful mindset. I'm trying to stay positive as much as possible, but it's hard not to check the news. It's hard not to, talk about what's happening, and but I'll do my best to to just get back on track, to be again myself as much as I can, and to deliver another story for you today. But first, before we begin, I would like to take a minute of silence for all the soldiers and civilians on both sides, Ukrainian and Russian conflict. Both sides of the Ukrainian and Russian conflict, who have lost their lives in the past few days. So let's take a minute of silence first. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, I don't think I'm gonna advertise anything during this stream. I just don't feel like it's right of me to do so. So obviously, thank you so much to all of you for being here, for watching my streams, and for following my channel. And to all of my patrons, thank you so much for supporting. It means a lot. And to everyone, if you can, please, if you can donate some money to the emergency fund, to the Red Cross, Ukrainian Red Cross, please do so, if you can, because they deliver medical aid, food, any supplies that the people over in Ukraine might need. So that's all I really wanted to say. Okay, and now, without further ado, let's move on to today's case. It was April 15th, 1988, when Linwood High School senior Randy Wayne Leach asked his mom if he could borrow her car that evening in order to attend a pre-graduation bonfire at a friend's farmhouse about 5 miles away from their home in Linwood, which is in Kansas. Randy's mom agreed because she trusted her son, who up until now never gave her any reasons to believe that he was anything but responsible, and he would not let her down. So she handed him the keys of her to her 1985 Dodge sedan and asked Randy to come back home at midnight, or around 12:30, from what I could gather. This was actually his regular curfew, and as always, he promised he would be there, he would be home by 12:30 that night. Between 6:30 p.m. And 6:45 p.m. it would be the last time Randy's parents would see their son, as he left for the party and for Linwood. This is the story of the disappearance of Randy Leach. On his way to the bonfire party, Randy actually decided to stop by the local convenience store, and it is known that he had purchased a couple of items that are just a regular, regular items that someone would buy if they were heading to a party or if they were hosting a party. So he bought a soda pop, some candy and petrol. Then also he stopped by at Kmart to pick up wax for a lawn mower because that summer Randy was planning to make some money by mowing lawns of his neighbors. His next destination ended up being another town, DeSoto, in Kansas, where he visited a body shop or garage. I don't know how to auto shop. I don't know how you guys call it, but I guess it could be auto shop. And that was in order to check on his 1966 Dodge Mustang, that he was actually restoring at the time. So he was driving his mom's car, but at the same time he also had another car that he was working on. This is also there is also some information about the fact that between Randy's stop at the convenience store and the next one at the auto shop or body shop, he also visited some friends, and one of them drove with him to the auto shop. Although I couldn't find any more precise information about who it was, who were those friends, where was the place, the friend's place that he visited between those locations, and who was the friend that he took with him afterwards. After those errands, Randy eventually does arrive at the party, and by then it's already between 9:30 and 10 p.m. Randy was actually one of 70 to 150 guests at the bonfire party, and it is known that the teenagers were engaging in drinking alcohol, using drugs during that event. It's not very clear what type of drugs exactly were being used and distributed at the party, or what kind of alcohol they were drinking. I mean, assuming it's just it's a regular party, I would just assume it was just beer. But obviously I don't have information about that. Definitely no information about what kind of drugs were being distributed at the event. Although Randy was definitely sober upon his arrival at the party, witnesses reported seeing him shortly after, and he was not well. Like, he didn't seem well. He was stumbling around. He wasn't able to really stand straight, and it seemed that Randy was heavily intoxicated, even though the problem is Randy was standing at 6 feet 3 inches tall. He was built like a linebacker, so he was very, very big, very strong build, and he was known to be an avid athlete who cared greatly about his health and condition of his body. His friends have never actually seen him drink more than a couple of beers, and even that, like when he was drinking those beers, he was never affected to this degree. So they've never actually seen him this drunk. So seeing him like this, stumbling around, not standing straight, really like out of it, it was out of the blue. It was definitely atypical for him. Like, it was not something that the friends would see every so often. At one point, one of Randy's friends even came up to him and asked him, "Hey, is everything okay?" To which Randy reportedly said that he didn't know what was wrong with him. Some people believe that Randy may have been drugged that night, but there isn't any sufficient evidence to back this theory up. Mind you, no one at the party actually saw him even holding a cup. So it's as if he came to the party, he was completely sober when he arrived, and then literally minutes later, he's like stumbling around, he's not able to stand straight, he's he looks like he's intoxicated, even though no one actually saw him drink anything. That night, Randy's parents went to sleep before their son's curfew that they agreed on, so 12:30, after midnight. Randy had never been late for his midnight curfew, which gave his parents no reason to believe this time would be any different. So they just figured, hey, he's gonna get here, we can just go to sleep, it's just a regular night. But it was different, because when they woke up at around 6 a.m. the next morning, Randy wasn't home, nor was the family's car, or his mother's car that he had borrowed the night before. But Randy's parents, Harold and Alberta Leach, decided not to panic and report their son missing just yet, because they thought, okay, maybe he got into a car accident and that's why he couldn't come home. Obviously, it's not ideal. We should definitely check the hospitals. Maybe he's hurt. Or maybe he ended up actually drinking at the party. Like, come on, those are high school kids. They are high school seniors. We're not naive. We know what's happening at those parties. So maybe he did end up drinking and, figured out, okay, I can't drive like this. I'm gonna stay at a friend's place. I don't want to drive like this at all. Still not great, but, he shouldn't be drinking. But hey, he's definitely fine. There's no way that something, strange happened to him. So they start calling Randy's friends one by one. But not one of them had seen Randy since the previous night. As a matter of fact, the last time someone saw Randy was when he was still at the party, and that was around 2 a.m., way after his curfew. Also, no one actually saw him leave the place. It's just that one moment he was there, as I said, like stumbling around, and the next moment he wasn't. He was just gone. Okay, but still, Harold, so Randy's dad, decided to check all the local hospitals, as I said, and ask about his son. Maybe it was a car accident after all, but none of the hospitals admitted Randy as a patient that night. Now was the time to call the police and report the 17-year-old Randy Leach as missing. The thing is, and that's another problem, this was 1988 and there was still that stupid mandatory rule of like 24-hour waiting period to actually report someone as missing, which to me, first of all, there used to be, like, in the movies you'll often see those police officers saying like, oh, you need to wait 48 hours until, before we can pronounce him missing. That's a bunch of baloney. It was such a bad rule, and then they decreased it to technically 24 hours, but this was still a very, very bad practice, and this should not be continued. And thankfully nowadays, more often, like, police, accepts the report even if the person is missing for like an hour or two and there is a strong suspicion that something may have happened. But again, this was 1988. Randy's parents did wait for 24 hours before officially reporting Randy as missing. So the report comes in on April 17th, 1988. Randy's parents contact the police about their son missing, but the response is reluctant and I don't know, like, how to describe it. Sorry, I can't pronounce it. Unenthusiastic. So, as I said, like, the police is pretty much reluctant to even take the case. Not very, like, enthusiastic to take it at best. The officers didn't really think it was a serious case. They heard about this teenage boy going to a pre-graduation party and immediately thought, yeah, I mean, come on, this kid is probably sleeping it off somewhere at a friend's house. It's just a waste of our time, or yeah, maybe just like the parents thought, maybe he got into an accident because he did drink, which he shouldn't be drinking, and he got into a car accident, so he's not missing. They weren't really treating it seriously. After being pressed, the police finally sent a couple officers down to the address where the party took place the previous night. So that was the Irwin's farm. But because Randy wasn't reported missing immediately, the place was already cleaned up. So it was pretty much impossible to find anything that would point at at foul play or anything about Randy's whereabouts. And this wasn't really noted by the police at the time, but the degree to which the whole place was cleaned up was not exactly typical for somewhere that just had a huge bonfire party with a bunch of teenagers. And when I say that it wasn't typical, like the degree to which it was cleaned, I mean the place was spotless clean. Not even a stray paper cup lying around. Squeaky clean, nothing. Which now when the police thinks about it, when, everyone sees this, reads about this case, it just sounds extremely suspicious. Like something may have happened. Like I would, in place of those police officers, obviously I can't really say that, I don't know, like I know that I can't really put myself in that position because I don't know what I would really do. No one knows what what they would do. But I don't know, like I guess at the time they just didn't see it, but now I'm pretty sure they would have, I don't know, come in with a UV light, try to figure out if there are any blood stains, anything, any traces of blood, any traces of foul play at the scene. But yeah, like at the time, the place was spotless, the place was squeaky clean. It was really weird, but obviously they didn't have any suspicion of something that something may have happened at the house. So everyone who attended the party was questioned, or rather there was an attempt to question them, but none of the teenagers were very, eager to speak to the police. Likely because most of them were underage, and that night almost everyone, if not everyone, was drinking and using drugs. They just didn't want to get in trouble with the law enforcement. Some people did admit that they saw Randy arrive at the party, but they didn't see him consuming any alcohol or drugs. Nevertheless, after a while, he started behaving drastically different than usual and seemed to be under the influence of something. So that's what the witnesses are saying. Like at the beginning, he was fine, and then suddenly a couple of minutes later, he's completely not himself. Like he's clearly under something, under the influence of something. Now let's go through a brief timeline of what happened that night, or rather of what we know happened that night. First, Annie Irwin, the mother of the high school senior who was hosting the party, reported seeing Randy around 10 p.m. Which, by the way, like Randy arrived at the party site between 9:30 p.m. and 10 p.m. So Annie Irwin sees him at 10 p.m. And according to her, at the time he already had trouble walking, but didn't appear to be drunk. Again, she didn't see him drink anything or even hold a cup, just like everyone else at the party. So, but she did note, like, okay, yeah, I didn't see him drink. I didn't see him anywhere near alcohol or even holding a cup, but I saw that he was not exactly walking like a sober person. Several people who attended the party told the police that around 12:30 a.m., they noticed Randy frantically searching for something, and when he was asked, he said he was looking for his car keys, which he allegedly misplaced. It didn't seem like everyone really helped him search for the keys, and no one knew whether he had found them, but they assumed he did because his car was no longer parked near the house after a while. It appears that at 1:30 a.m., Randy's friend, John Burns, was trying to walk Randy out of the party in order to take him home, but Randy refused because he was still talking about how he didn't have his car keys and he can't just leave without them. John was actually a designated driver that night and was going to drive several people home, so he actually first guides Randy to his mom's car and then tells him to, man, just wait for me here. I have my car is full. It's full of people. I can't take you now on the first round, but wait for me by your car, by this, just wait for me here. I'm gonna come back. I'll just drop off people. I'll come back and I'm gonna take you home. But when John returns around 2 a.m., Randy is no longer there, and nor is the car. So Randy, disappeared, and John assumes that, okay, I suppose Randy felt better. Maybe he just drove off. I mean, that's what it seems. He found his keys and he just took the car and drove off. Not ideal, but hey, it's not exactly my problem right now. The last time Randy is seen was at around 2:05 a.m. and it was Annie Irwin who saw him again. This time Randy seemed to have been waiting to use the restroom. And as I mentioned before, Randy is believed to have left the party around 2 a.m., even though no one actually saw him leave the site. However, the host of the party told the police that all the guests had left the property at around 2:15 a.m. When the party was officially over. So Randy was definitely not at the house at 2:15 a.m. that night. So he must have left sometime before then. With this information, the police released missing persons alert and flyers all over the town, but soon they figured it would be easier to look for the car than the person. So they put out an alert for all patrols to look out for a gray 1985 Dodge sedan with license plate number LVJ8721. They figured that either someone will eventually spot the car on the road, or on the side of the road, or Randy will drive it himself and will be found. But another 24 hours had passed and there was no sign of either. Now, the police started to explore the possibility that Randy may have not left the premises on his own accord. First of all, Randy's parents reassured the police that Randy had no plans of leaving Linwood. He hadn't graduated yet, that was one. Like, he was about to graduate high school. He actually had plans for that summer. As I said before, he was going to make some money, some extra money by mowing lawns of his neighbors. And then he wanted to go to trade school after graduation, so he was making plans way ahead into his future. Not to mention he had this 1966 Mustang that he was passionately trying to restore, which, by the way, was still sitting at the body shop, the auto shop, and it was untouched. So this is simply not an image of someone who was planning to leave town, who was planning to leave his family and, I don't know, like, start a new life somewhere else without telling anyone. Like, that's not, that's just not something that he would do. And because of this disparity in theories, The police were very slow to search the scene, and then shortly after Randy's disappearance, that house strangely actually burned down to the ground in an quote-unquote accidental fire, so there was no more scene to search. Additionally, the police received multiple anonymous tips, people claiming to have seen Randy or the car, which only fueled the belief that Randy was simply a runaway. And that, didn't help the investigation, definitely didn't help Randy's case as a missing persons case. One such tip came in on April 19th, which is 3 days after Randy's disappearance. Someone claimed to have spotted Randy at Bonner Spring High School. Then on April 25th, another person reported seeing Randy, or rather Randy's mom's car, and claimed that the car was, quote, driving erratically, end quote, down Iowa Street in Lawrence. However, neither of those tips could ever be confirmed as true, so the police only assumed that those tips were false. Well, I mean, at least now they assume it. Now they know it, but at the time, those tips were slowing down the actual investigation. They were definitely preventing the police from going to the site, going to Irwin's farm, searching the woods, searching the creek, the whole area, searching the house before it burned down. But yeah, and I mean that case, not that case. The thing that part where the house just burns down, it's just, I don't know, like, yes, it might be accidental, it might be a complete coincidence, but at the same time, there's that small, voice inside my head that, and I'm sure that it was the same for a lot of people interested in this case, that voice that says, hey, this was not a coincidence, like, that's no coincidence, something is wrong here. So, to be fair, later the police did admit to mistakenly assuming that Randy was a runaway, or that he simply left the scene on his own volition, without really exploring the possibility of foul play involved. But now they were not so sure. And then rumors started. Even though Linwood was known as this small, very quiet town, around Randy's disappearance, there were some dark rumors circulating in the community of the Linwood area. There were stories of a satanic cult, or rather satanic cult activity in southern Leavenworth County, even before Randy went missing. People started talking about how Randy must have been abducted on the night of the party and probably used as a human sacrifice in a satanic ritual. Some even said that the attendees of the party, so the guests of the party, were involved, they were worshippers, and they slaughtered Randy right in that house, which was later thoroughly cleaned. So if you don't know what it is, it must be Satan. And then a witness appeared. Later that same year, a man reported to the police saying that he had been abducted by Satanists or satanic cult, and he was held captive for 2 weeks in a cave near 12755 Loring Drive, which was close to the Irwin farm. And in comparison to how close it was to the Irwin farm, then Irwin farm was, the distance between Irwin farm and Randy's house, like, yeah, that's definitely closer than, if Randy was supposed to, like, drive back to his house. So this man claimed that he was threatened by his abductors and that they would cut off his arm, they would kill him if he didn't cooperate. And then they showed him a body. And it was a body of a male hanging inside the cave. The abducted men said that this body belonged to Randy Leach. Sometime after, the police did search the cave, but they claimed to have found nothing. No bodies, nothing to indicate that there was ever a body in there. It was believed that the witness was simply under the influence of drugs and likely imagined this whole story. But Randy's father, Harold, later said that the cave has since been basically destroyed and bulldozed at the request of the sheriff, which the sheriff of the Linwood area strongly denied. Let me read some of the chats. Satanic aliens. Oh god. I mean, that's what we end up with always. Like any case, we usually end up with either Satanists or aliens. It's Satan. To be frank, a cult would definitely premeditate murder. That is true. I mean, that wouldn't be the first nor the last cult to be like involved in some shenanigans and a possible murder. I've actually spoken, like I've actually covered a cult before, and it was also like a bunch of very suspicious deaths connected to the cult. Not to mention like Jamestown. Come on, Jonestown? Jamestown? Jonestown. That was Jones. I always mix it up, but yeah, a bunch of people died and it was a cult. Demonic aliens. That site on Loring Road does look sus. Check it on Google Maps. I did see it on Google Maps, and it's just like, I don't know why. I mean, obviously they didn't get that tip like until much later, and also the police was very much focused on the fact that Randy was likely a runaway. So they didn't really entertain many theories, or they didn't search the area, which they should have, because it's so close to Irwin's farm. Maybe not like extremely close, but it's definitely closer than, I don't know, like Randy's home or Linwood or any other sites that any towns, any sites that they did explore, did, you know, look into. Okay, but let's move on. Okay, so another person connected to the satanic cult theory was Robert Marbles, and he was one of Randy's classmates. There were always rumors going around about him for being an eccentric loner and a self-professed Satanist. And let me pause here and I bet he was simply an introverted kid going through a bit of a, I don't know, an emo stage in his life, and they just like decided to pin it on him. How about you know, lay off the emo kid for once? Like, we're just, believe it or not, I'm an introvert, and like, if someone, just because I don't like to socialize or don't like to talk to people a lot, you know, in a group gathering, doesn't mean I'm like a Satanist, or doesn't mean I would murder someone. Or does it? Anyway, so several of, you know, Robert's peers would accuse Robert of being a Satanist after Randy's disappearance, especially after the disappearance. And one of Robert's classmates would tell the police that Robert would meet him, on one occasion, he met him at a Walmart, like in a Walmart parking lot, showing off a knife, and allegedly Robert said, quote, "This is what we used to sacrifice Randy," end quote. The police did question Robert, and while he did read the Satanic Bible, he reportedly did not believe in the concept. He definitely denied being a Satanist. He was just like, yo, I'm just an introvert. Like, I don't know, like high school kids are bullying me because I don't like socializing, and I'm a little bit, I don't know, emo, a little bit not, I do not fit into their I don't know, their idea of a high school kid. And I'm just being bullied. So he was definitely targeted by bullies for simply being an outcast. Let me say this, assholes. But who knows? So another theory about what happened to Randy, again, focuses on the party and the people who attended. Some believe that Randy must have witnessed something at the party that he wasn't supposed to see, and then he was murdered as a means to basically silence him. An acquaintance of Randy's, a man named Steve, I guess Dougherty, was seen near the property the morning after the party. And he was behaving in a very, like, according to the witness, his behavior was very suspicious because he was driving by the property on the back road. He was driving at 10 miles per hour, where the speed limit on that back road was 55 miles per hour. It seemed like he was, I don't know, searching for something, looking for something. At least that's what the witness says. Like, this guy, I saw him in a car. He was driving very, very slowly on this back road, and he seemed to be looking for something. Strangely enough, the same man, Steve, later claimed that in March 1989, so that's nearly a year after Randy's disappearance, he had found a dismembered foot, wearing a tennis shoe on the banks of Kansas River. And don't ask me where this, like, how did this report come to be? How did he report it? Why did he report it suddenly? Where did this come from? Because I have no idea. I was trying to find it, and it was just this random mention that, oh yeah, I found a foot. And here the reports get a bit wonky, because some articles say that Steve found the foot and it was determined not to belong to Randy, or maybe he determined that it was not Randy's for some reason, but like the police never looked into it. Meanwhile, other articles say that Steve only pointed out the area where he saw the foot, and then the police investigated the scene, but found nothing, and then simply assumed it must have not belonged to Randy for some reason, without testing it, without trying to comb the area and find this foot. So really, those, like, sources, pretty much, like, the story is a little bit different. As I said, on one hand it says, oh, Steve found a foot, the police investigated, it wasn't Randy's. The other version is that Steve pointed out the area where he saw the foot, police searched the area but didn't find the foot. But for some reason they just assumed it wasn't Randy's. I don't even know what's happening, don't ask me. I can only, like, just, you know, shrug my shoulders and shrug and just tell you I have no idea. So this stayed basically unexplained. Steve's weird behavior just, you know, was not really investigated, and Steve remained a potential person of interest because he was never a, like, I can't speak today. He was never named as one. But he was a potential person of interest right up until his unexpected death, and whatever secrets he may have held, whatever information he may have had, died with him. The investigation was believed to have been botched from the very start. First, the assumption that Randy was not missing and instead he had run away from home, that definitely slowed everything down. Then, not investigating the crime scene thoroughly, not looking at it as, you know, the case having the possibility of a foul play, and waiting for months upon months until they actually decided to search the whole area surrounding the farm, with creeks and fields included. The police also didn't exactly do a great job at following up with the leads, Steve being one. And then in 1990, they had another person. Eric Montgomery was arrested as a suspect in Randy Leach's disappearance. Montgomery was actually a suspect in 2 homicides just a few miles from Randy's home. Eric himself admitted that he wasn't working alone. He actually had an accomplice who would hide the bodies in barrels and toss them into the Missouri River. While Eric Montgomery ended up in prison on different charges, he eventually died in prison with no evidence ever confirming his involvement in Randy's disappearance. The strange thing is that the police never reported to Randy's parents that they had a suspect who was also believed to be connected to other homicides, so they never got this information when the police was investigating Eric. Like, that was sealed, this was a secret. No one was telling the parents that, hey, we may have a suspect who is responsible for other murders. And mind you, Eric Montgomery's information was sealed in court, so the public and private investigators hired by Randy's parents never got access to those files. And likely never will, who knows? But so far, I don't think there was any information about them having access to Eric's files. Oh, another theory is that the police simply botched the investigation at the very beginning, and then the sheriff decided to try and cover any developments up in order to save his face and in order to, not bring shame to the police, the Linwood police. As I mentioned just a minute ago, Harold and Alberta Leach, so Randy's parents, did eventually hire a private investigator because they were not, they couldn't trust the police. They didn't have much faith by now. The police was not really very helpful and they were very, very sluggish. So, Randy's parents were like, okay, we're just gonna pay out of our own pocket to hire an investigator. They were just tired of the lack of cooperation from the police. They were tired of not being constantly in the dark. And ever since they hired a PI, more and more bizarre things started happening. First, one of the investigators who took Randy's case would shortly after be found dead with his wife, both of them having been shot. And get this, the police closed this case, saying it was a murder-suicide. The next investigator on the case, along with the Leavenworth County Sheriff's Detective Don Weston, helped bring 3 men for questioning in the case. So there was a progress. Okay, we've got 3 suspects or 3 persons of interest. But those men were released not long after. So shortly after, they were questioned, but they were released. And then the 2 investigators suddenly, out of the blue, quit the case and left the state, making a cryptic statement about fearing for their own safety. And this was never explained. So was there someone who threatened the police and the investigators and the private investigators? Someone who didn't want Randy's case to be solved? Randy Leach was legally pronounced dead in 2001, even though there was never any evidence to believe that he was actually dead. In 2002, the case was actually reclassified from a missing person's case to a homicide. Although still no evidence and no Randy. After years and years of searching for Randy, for body, for the car, the case still remained open but started going cold. That is, until Timothy Dennis, a longtime investigator on the case, developed a completely different theory that he believed could be true. So he said he didn't think Randy was murdered on the night when he disappeared. Instead, Randy actually did, according to Dennis, Randy actually did try to return home that night and drove his mom's car. But because he wasn't feeling well, he may have been drugged or intoxicated. Maybe, he did actually get into an accident and his vehicle may have plunged into Stranger Creek near the site. The creek is indeed deep enough to conceal a vehicle throughout the seasons without being detected. So at the time, 2018, the police did engage a sonar search, and they found a car in that very creek. But it turned out that it wasn't Randy's car. So they did find a car just in the spot where Detective Dennis believed that Randy's car could have plunged into the creek. But again, this is not Randy's car. That however, doesn't mean this theory is completely wrong, because a car that drove into that creek doesn't necessarily stay in one place over the years. The dive team actually discovered another vehicle, and it was a stolen vehicle that likely fell into the creek, but then it was pushed past the nearby pillars by the current. So initially, everyone believed that it would be impossible for the car to be pushed through the pillars or between the pillars, but then they find another car that was likely that's what happened to that car. It still wasn't Randy's vehicle, but that could mean it's possible that if Randy fell to his death, the current would have pushed the car anywhere in the past 30 years. And that means anywhere between the bridge in Linwood or in Leavenworth County and St. Louis, Kansas. And in conclusion, Randy's disappearance remains unsolved. And while his parents still hope for his safe return, the Missing Persons Organization created age progression portraits to keep that hope alive. And you can definitely look it up. You can definitely see a bunch of portraits. I did show a couple, I did show one of them. Let me just show you. So this is one of them on the bottom of this, the map. That's one of the age progression photos. There's a bunch of them. I just chose not to show it here because it's very easily searchable. You can go on the Doe Network. So the Doe Network website is also a website that gathers missing persons reports, all the photos of the missing person, age progression photos. You can definitely check it out on that website. You can also go to the website of the Charlie Project, and they also have another age progression picture. So it's definitely, there's definitely a few of them out there. But if you have any information concerning this case, you can contact the Leavenworth County Sheriff's Office at 800-572-7463. And that's it. That's it for this case. There's not much information that I can share with you right now because as I said, the last update was from 2018, and it was about exploring the possibility of Randy just plunging to his death in the Stranger Creek. But so far, no car was found. Cars were found, but Randy's mom's car wasn't found and Randy wasn't found. Okay, And before we finish the stream, I would like to thank all of my patrons for all the support that you guys have given me and this channel. So I'm gonna read out all the names: Colonel Turtle, Tyrant Kitsune, Zinc, Scholastica, CW, Esau Benrostro, Rudel Genoodle, IDK Bacon 53, Jacob Ian, Holmes's Apprentice, Juniper Clark, Nonan, Emmanuel Cadet, Windstorm 555, Ian, RJ, Bubak, Kronos, Hex Gengar, Beverly, Eric, Leonovsky, Gravesinger, Brandon S, Kanta the Tank, I can't pronounce it, Gun Puppy, Rai Oki, Racer7331, Alpaca My Bags. I fucking love this name. I just had to say that. Alpaca My Bags. Oh my lord. That's the best name. Rune S, Christopher McCanns, and Calf. Thank you so much, you guys, for all your support. Some of your, like, the names, the usernames are giving me a, you know, making me laugh. Genius. Let me just say that, genius. But again, thank you so much for all your support. Obviously, without any of you guys here, this channel wouldn't exist. So thank you for following. And if you liked the case, if you liked the video, please take a second to like the video. To, you know, click that like button. It just takes a literal second, but it helps a lot. Okay, and now let me switch back to the chat room. Okay, I'm sorry that I'm not very, like, chatty. I don't really respond that much to the chat. I was trying my best, but, you know, I honestly, to be, like, completely honest with you, I kind of didn't feel like responding as much. I just wanted to focus on the case and, like, take my mind off of all this stuff that's happening. Again, if you guys want to help, you can go to my other video the previous video that I uploaded, and it's I am Polish, I stand with you. You can find links to Ukrainian Red Cross, to Project Hope, and to Razom Emergency Fund, which are all very good, you know, very good organizations to donate to if you want to help with the current situation, if you want to help, just, you know, contribute to the humanitarian help that those organizations are sending to Ukraine. Okay, so I hope you did enjoy the case. And as for any announcements, well, tomorrow I'm gonna have a bonus true crime stream on my Patreon. I couldn't do it on Friday, but I'm trying to catch up, and I'm gonna have another one this week on Friday or Saturday. Hopefully I'm gonna send an update on that. Like, I'll just update. I'll post the schedule possibly today, and that's about it. You know, thank you so much. Again, stay safe out there. Always lock your doors and windows, and until the next time, bye.